As an all-rounder, I target all the species, but there's one fish on that list that's a bit of a rarity, and that's the crucian carp. There's a number of lakes and ponds that hold crucian carp, but specimen-sized crucian carp are rare. When I say specimen, I'm talking about fish over 2 pounds, you know, edging over 3 pounds, which is a true specimen, and even over 4 pounds. These are extremely rare fish to find, and there's only a few lakes in the country that target is a possibility. So it's a rarity for me to go crucian fishing. Absolutely love it. There's not many venues to target, and it got to the point in my angling where I had a stint on the water a bit down my way for some crucians, but I felt I needed to give it a real good go to catch a proper specimen. As I mentioned, there's only a few lakes in the country that have huge crucians in them. One of them is where I am today, and it's a beautiful lake in Shropshire. It's 6 acres. It was dug around 40 years ago, and it's actually run and managed by my good mate Ed Matthews, who's a great angler and has done amazing things with this lake. Very fortunate enough to fish here, but it was one of those where I could have gone to other lakes, like there was a couple, but it just didn't float my boat, and this just ticked all the boxes. Big crucians, beautiful scenery and setting, and it's a lot more quiet than the other waters to fish, so I couldn't wait to get started on what would turn out to be a 2-year campaign. Crucian carp, absolutely packed with character. Got that grumpy face, you know, that face. Every time you land one, they look at you as if to say, "Boy, what you doing? Put me back." Beautiful colours on them, and elusive. As I mentioned, there's not many waters that hold true crucians. They're susceptible to hybridisation as well. So there's a number of waters that have fish that have hybridised and they're not true crucians. To find big, specimen-sized, true crucians, there's just so few waters that hold them. My first real go for some big crucians was Johnson's Lake, very well known for its huge crucians, magnificent fish, and it was the only place at the time to have a go, you know, for a specimen-sized fish. So I did a few sessions there, and I managed a PB of £3.7. I had another one of £3.7. Only did a couple of sessions there, a couple of days, didn't have a night ticket or anything like that. And I believe this was probably going back about 8-9 years. After that, I hadn't done any crucian fishing. Nothing had popped up whatsoever. You know, this water came around at the perfect time, you know, really encouraged me to give them another go. Sutton Lake, it's not exactly close to my home. It's a 4-hour journey from sort of North Kent, so it was always going to be longer sessions, 3 days really. That's that sort of time I wanted to spend on the bank to maximise my chances with the travel. The crucians have been in here for quite some time now. Ed will probably correct me on this. From memory, I believe they went in here about 15 to 18 years ago. Ed, sorry if that's wrong, but that's all I can remember. So they've been in here a while and they've been steadily putting on the weight. And this lake has actually done fish to, I believe, 4 pounds 2 ounces, which is a monster crucian in anyone's book. I mean, fish over 4 pounds, that is the holy grail of crucian fishing. Crucians are also very vulnerable fish. There's been many stories that I've heard of them being stocked into lakes and then gone. Just completely vanished. They just do a Houdini and disappear. And there's theories on what happens to them, and you know, there's hopes that they pop up again at bigger weights, but I think the reality is they're predated on. Now, sometimes that doesn't happen, thankfully, and they go missing, but they get caught again. Years down the line, sometimes 6, 7, 8 years down the line, they get caught. And they're usually at a decent size by then. So it's exciting when they do pop up. And again, you know, I've used this word a number of times, but extremely rare. They really are. One of the best times to fish for crucians is in the spring. Autumn is also very good. I love the month of October to fish for crucians. They get their heads down. Spring, they're at good weights before they spawn. And then during the summer, yeah, they are associated with being a summer fish. I personally wouldn't target them a big one in the summer. I'm actually fishing now and it's August for crucians, so that's gone against my my thinking there. But really, you know, if you're planning a session, a campaign job, spring and autumn, they're the times of year that you really want to target. My first session was in early spring 2023. I arrived at the lake, had a really good look around. I was treating it more as a recce session. You know, you really want to get your bearings, check depths and clarity and, you know, everything from swims, and just familiarise yourself with the lake. I set up in a swim, I think it's called the Bay. It was always going to be a bit of a base camp because my plan was to move around the lake during the day and bait up some spots, and that was going to be my sort of nighttime sleeping area, and obviously put the rods out. It wasn't fantastic on the crucian front. I had a few of the smaller ones. I had a few twos, which super fish, but not what I was here for. But I just kept on getting done by the carp, to be honest. I caught some crackers, but you know, as soon as you hook a carp and it whizzes straight through your swim, that's pretty much game over. You know, you've got to reset them because those crucians they're going to be, you know, they're going to move on. So it was a really productive session. Didn't catch what I wanted, but it was always going to be a campaign job, and I was more than happy to bag a few crucians, get to know the lake, and come back with a different plan of attack. So it's early morning on a beautiful Shropshire pit. I'm here targeting the crucian carp, one of my favourite species. Been very fortunate to bag one early morning, which we'll have a look at in a minute. It's not the biggest in the world, but it's a crucian carp, which is the target. But what more could you want? The lake is absolutely stunning, and it's the perfect morning for getting out there and giving the crucians a go. Stunning little crucian, well, over £2, so not little in most people's books, but for this lake, quite a small one. But the colours on it, absolutely stunning due to the gin clear water that you've got here. And oh, they're just delightful creatures, aren't they? I mean, look at them. And hopefully can bag a bigger one, because there's some really special fish in here. But do you know what? I could catch these all day long, all day. Lovely fish. Let's get her back. So at this stage, I'd only done a couple of sessions, but already my tactics had started to develop and change. I originally started out with the flatbed feeders, and I was moulding the bait into the feeder, and I was using wafters, and that sort of changed over time. Margins was where I was targeting. I actually created a baiting spoon so that I could get the baits right underneath the trees, so where the crucians like to live. You've actually got root systems underneath the trees. There's a lot of willows here, and the root systems are quite complex, and the crucians get right in there, right into the shallow water and the crevices, and you want to drop it, and that's only possible with a baiting spoon. You ready? Now, being me, being cheap, I decided to make one myself. So I've got my old Milo pole, which I've had for about 25 years. I cut the end off that, and then basically put a baiting spoon handle the whole way down until it was wedged tight with a baiting spoon on the end. I then got some foam and super glued rolled up foam either side of the baiting spoon, so it was like a hovercraft. Believe me, I mean, it's not going to win any prizes for product of the year, but you know, it did the job, and it got the bait where I wanted it to go. And that was really important, I think, for success on this lake. My next session was in spring. It was a few weeks later. I set up in a swim called Boat. A new wind had pushed in, and it didn't take long before I had an incredible looking crucian in the net, and it was a PB. It was a 311. It was a monster in beautiful condition. The water, the clarity had, well, the water had cleared up, so the colours on it were incredible. It was a fantastic start to the campaign, proper monster, and so early on. So I had that PB of 311, and then the session just got better. I had a couple more threes and a few twos to boot, so it was just a fantastic session crucian fishing. So the spring rolled on. I didn't manage to up my 311 caught earlier in the season, but I had a number of 2-pounders, some amazing fish. I also had some really nice carp, a lovely common. It was time to get back home and plan to come back in the autumn. So after leaving the lake in late spring, I actually did a little bit of crucian fishing with my son Jack in the summer, which was fantastic. Nothing big, but we targeted them on a lake down our way. That was fantastic to see him getting into the crucians and enjoying that.
So cute and grumpy.
Cute and grumpy. First crucian.
Yeah.
First ever crucian. That's it. If I pick him up, that's it. Just pull the mesh up and he'll come up. That's it. And put it back nicely. Well done, mate. Give me. Come on. Yeah. What'd you say? Boom! Time moved on, and before I knew it, it was autumn. It had changed though, completely different weather conditions and the water clarity. It actually coloured up slightly. Now, with most species, depending on the water clarity, they lose colour. Clear water, they tend to go a lot darker, you get the dark back. So with the water clarity, the water being a bit more coloured, the fish were going to be a bit more washed out than they usually were. Now, all crucians look amazing, washed out or not. Still nice colours and still dark, but just not the same as they were back when I fished for them in the spring. So with the change of water clarity, I was expecting the fish to be slightly lighter in colour, but my tactics were going to be the same. During the spring and at the start of autumn, I'd been receiving some odd indications on my feeder rods. They were more aggressive than liners. I knew something was going on, and crucians are extremely finicky feeders, as we all know. They are really gentle feeders. I think I was getting done by the crucians, and I was getting sort of bang on the rod tip, quite aggressive, and then it would just stop. It definitely weren't liners, and this is where my tactics changed, and it was a bit of an evolution into using different tactics to suit what was going on. I figured that I was getting done, so originally I was actually moulding the bait into the method feeder, and what I changed was I stopped doing that. I shortened the hook links even further, so they were probably about 2.5 inches long, and I still moulded the ground bait mix around the flatbed feeder, but I left the hook bait, the hook link, out. Now, my theory behind this was that when you fold it back into the feeder, you've got a slack on the fluorocarbon, and you want tension on that for these delicate biters to hook themselves and catch them. So I started to do that, and I definitely saw success in using that method. Rig-wise was 5-pound fluorocarbon, the acolyte stuff, really supple, which is very important, down to a size 16 B983 Camazan hook. So I felt everything was set up okay. It was just a matter of how I was presenting the bait over that feeder. 100% increased my catch rate. It stopped all of those sort of semi-takes that I was receiving. We never know, and that's the beauty of angling. You just have to go on what you see and then figure it out in your head. It's that, I say it all the time, but it is a puzzle and you're putting those pieces together, and it's evolution on the bank. You're gauging everything from weather conditions, tactics, what you see, and you formulate a plan, adapt, change to succeed. And that's what I did there. In my mind, I like to think it worked. I don't know, I might have lost fish because of it, but I definitely stopped those erratic half takes and caught fish. Arriving at the lake, I was going to employ the same tactics, go and cover water, you know, fish different swims. I started off in willow. I actually had a couple of 2-pounders, scraper 2s, smaller fish, fantastic start, and then took the roving approach again, and I was just spooning out my feeders underneath the willows in different areas and just moving about, giving it sort of 2-3 hours in each spot. As it happened, I ended up back at my base camp, which was at that time the boat swim. Again, the conditions were quite terrible. There was some heavy rain, wind, but it was pushing into that corner of the lake again, and having caught a big one out of there before, you know, you tend to go to where you've had success, and I know I could fish all the other swims anyway. So got back to the swim, put the rods out, I flicked the right hand rods down to the margin. I actually did the free rod trick with my middle rod because there's a bank you can't fish and you can't get to, and I wanted to be tight to it. So I did the old casting over onto like the reeds, and then I dropped it in with the other rod. So that was fishing good. My left hand rod, which was the banker rod, was put by this nice overhanging tree, and it's where I'd caught the last big crucian back in the spring. So trap set, sat down, made a cup of tea. Within half an hour, straight in. You can tell it's a crucian. They don't usually fight, they usually just bounce around in a circle before they get tired, pop up and you can net them. But hooked into this fish and landed an incredible looking crucian. £3, 3 ounce, colours slightly, it's a bit lighter than they usually are, but I think that's due to the clarity of the water at this time of year. We've had a lot of rain, so it's coloured up, but can't argue with that. I mean, the colours on the fins, the rays, sort of like red with black rays on the fins, they looked amazing. Crucians just look stunning anyway, and you know, you just, when you've got a big one like that and you look at them, you don't really want to put them back. So that was a great start, couple of 2s, that 3, rod back out. I didn't really know what I was in for because it didn't take much longer before my middle rod went off, which was the free rod trick on the far bank. I bumped it off. Look, we can't win them all and you're going to lose fish. And I was gutted though, I was gutted because a lot of effort had gone into putting that rod there. It wasn't simple, and it was in perfect position, and it would have been really rewarding to have caught one off of that spot that I effectively created. But anyway, it was looking good, I was getting bites, and well, I was going to stay put after having that lost fish and a fish. I got a take on the left-hand rod again. Felt similar to the other one. I knew it was going to be a big fish. You could tell with the 2-pounders, they're just not as heavy. And this one was plodding around, and it came up, and I could see it was a good fish. Netted it, and had a look down, and oh, I thought, that's going to be close to my PB. How's that for a crucian carp? Got the bite early this morning, a real subtle bite, and had to go and actually fill the line, and I felt like a little dink like that, and this beauty was on the end, 311. Huge crucian and fin perfect. This one hasn't got one bit of damage on it whatsoever. What a lovely fish. Really, really chuffed with this one. It's definitely made my session. So I'd equalised my PB. I was more than happy, you know, I'm here just to catch nice crucians. I don't go fishing for PBs. It's always nice when they come along, but really you're targeting big fish, whichever one slips up sometimes is just a bit of luck. If you're catching big stamp of fish, good fish, you know, sooner or later the big one will come along. But I was more than happy with that. 311, fantastic looking fish, stuck its dorsal right up for all the camera shots and the filming. You know, really angry, not happy at all. So after that fantastic day, the night and the evening was fairly quiet, and I fished the morning, didn't have anything, and headed back to Kent with a big smile on my face. Spring 2024 arrived, so we're now a year on from when I had started my campaign on Sutton, back up the M25, M40 and then M6 to Shropshire, sunny Shropshire. I was really looking forward to targeting these big crucians, especially at this time of year, because I knew a big one was achievable. As with pretty much all of our cool species, the spring is the time of year where they put that weight on via spawn. So they're usually a lot heavier, in very good condition, and yeah, I was going to try and make the most of it. So when I arrived, I did my usual, you know, there's no rush to get set up. So I just walked around the lake, always do a couple of laps first, peering the margins. The water clarity was pretty good compared to the autumn. It definitely cleared up. I had planned to go with my usual tactics. And I brought the float rod with me as well, which I'd been using regularly, but we'll talk about that a bit later. And I ended up settling in the car park swim. Now, that wasn't just for convenience, as you may think, because obviously it's the car park swim, so yes, it was by the car, but it wasn't for that reason. I'd actually seen a fish roll when I arrived, which was more than I'd seen anywhere else on the lake, so it just made sense to go in there. Also, there was a new wind trickling in there, southerly. Now, one thing I had learnt by this point, and obviously, you know, this is something that Ed had touched on as well, speaking to him, is the crucians do follow the wind, but a new wind. So, regular wind pushing into a specific area of the lake doesn't usually mean that they will be there. On a new wind, especially a southerly, a southwesterly, a warm wind, they tend to get on the end of it. So when there's a change in the wind, I'm mobile. I move on it. And it just turned, funnily enough, that morning into the car park swim, where there's a couple of swims over there, but I chose the car park swim to fish from. It just seemed a couple of nice opportunities there on the far right margin, and there's a sort of overhanging willow on the left. So I still had the option of moving around. It's one of those places you're not just stuck to that swim, which is great. So you don't have to put all your eggs in one basket. Tactic-wise was the same as what I'd been having success on, keeping that hook link out the feeders, really short fluorocarbon hook links, the ground bait, and Scopex sweet corn on the hook. You know, just tiny little hair rigs, little piece of corn. I like to pick the ones that fit the hair perfectly. You want it as tight to that shank of the hook as you can get it. Very finicky biters, as I've mentioned, so that was really important. I would actually get the corn and just go through all the pieces, trying to find that perfect shaped one that fits the rig that I've made. By now, I'm knackered. I leave my house to get here usually about 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't do traffic jams and queues. I can't do it. It drives me insane. So I'd rather get up at 2:30, get a coffee on the go, pack the car, and then shoot off at 3 o'clock. I miss all the traffic and I get to the lake in decent time. So that's what I did. And the one problem with that is you're shattered. So camp set up, got bivvy all sorted, got the rods out. I was woken up by probably the best alarm call an angler could get. My right hand rod screaming. I actually thought, straight away in my head, I thought it's going to be a carp because it was peeling line. And I picked up the rod and I could tell, well, it's not a carp. If it is, it's one of the smallest ones in here by a mile. So I was confident it was a crucian. I'm still half asleep at this point, really. You know, I've just woken up. I think the take was, without looking at my notes, the take was, I think, around 11:30, 12. It was sort of midday-ish, which was quite strange because most of the bites are either early morning or evening, but that's fishing. It's unpredictable, isn't it? And that's why we love it. So I was playing this fish, taking it really easy, still half asleep. Came in pretty easy, as you would expect from a crucian, and netted it. I looked down and it wasn't like the other one where I thought, oh, that might, you know, up my PB. I knew this was a big one. I looked at it, I thought, oh, that's you know, that's just under 4 or just over. It was one of those touch and goes, but I knew it was a big fish, and I knew it was one of, you know, a PB. On the scales, I couldn't believe it. £4 on the dot. Now, no one likes a big fish of that sort of size to be on the dot. You kind of want it a bit over or a bit before, but that's what it was. It was £4 on the dot, you know, and the scales don't lie. So, talk about happy. What a fish. Absolutely made up with this £4 crucian. Let's get her back. I mean, it had been a year, you know, didn't do loads of sessions, but I had put a lot of effort in, and a reasonable amount of time, a lot of travel, which means a lot of money, a lot of commitment, and that was the main target. And like I said, I didn't come here to fish it for a £4. We'd all like one. I just came to catch some lovely crucians, but that was the best reward I could have got. First fish of the trip, I was elated. So after the excitement of the £4, the numerous phone calls that I made, you know what it's like, you're just so excited, you want to tell the world. And to get it right at the start of the session as well, it kind of takes pressure off. You're on cloud 9, so anything else you get is just going to be a bonus. The next morning, the same rod was away, and a 310 graced my net. It was turning out to be a fantastic session, and as if the 4 wasn't enough, to back it up with a 310 just made it one of the best crucian sessions that I've ever had. So after a long campaign, catching a number of lovely crucians, I managed my 4, and looks like I'm going to end it on this incredible specimen. Scale perfect, and put up a great fight as well for a crucian. They normally just swim around in circles, but what a fish, and what an end to a great campaign. The beauty of these crucians as well is they are quite unique in how they look, and the 310 in comparison to the £4, it was a different shape. You know, it had a sort of, not kinked back, but you know, it had a different shape to it. So it's always nice to see a bit of character within the fish, so you can distinguish them as well, which is great. So during that session, I gave the float a good go. I lost one on the float. I lost 2 actually. I lost 2 on the float, which I was absolutely gutted about, because I really did want one on the float. Although I hadn't given it too much of a go. You know, that is the most enjoyable way to catch them. But that session ended with another 3 and a couple of 2s. So it was well, I say a couple of 2s actually. I had quite a few 2s that session. So it was the best crucian session I've ever had, and one that I won't forget. Bye bye. So every session that I did throughout those couple of years, I always took my float rod with me. It's the best way to catch them. I love catching fish on a float rod, but it wasn't ideal conditions for a number of my sessions. Heavy winds, especially in the autumn sessions, and a lot of the time you're fishing under these big willows and you can't really present a bait. However, you can catch them on the float, and I did lose a couple, but conditions weren't really suitable, so I wish I'd given it a bit more of a go, but I felt at that time and in those conditions, the method feeder was the most effective approach. When it comes to float fishing for the crucians, I brought along my 17-foot acolyte, which may sound excessive. However, I was using it with a centre pin and using it actually like a pole, so I could drop the float right down in the margins close to the overhanging trees, and even get under some of the more accessible areas where the branches are slightly higher. Can't beat catching them on a centre pin and a float rod, which is what I attempted to do, and like I said, I did lose a couple, but just didn't fish with it that often. Using wagglers, crystal wagglers most of the time. However, my friend Andrew Field, who's an amazing talented float maker, made some floats for me that I really desperately wanted to catch a crucian on. He actually made some perch bobbers for me that I used on a previous video, and I didn't catch a perch on that either, so it was quite frustrating. But these floats are magnificent, and I gave it a go, but there were a couple of swims where I actually reverted back to the crystal waggler, because the last thing I wanted to do is lose one of these floats. He did mention to me that one of them is made from the quill of a wild golden eagle, so that's not the kind of thing you want to get stuck 20 foot up in a tree. So I was conscious of that, and I just thought, I gave it a go, but it was mainly with the crystal wagglers after that. So we're here now, summer 2024. I've had a great couple of years on the water. We were here early morning. We gave it a really good go to get one on the float. We really tried. I actually lost one. I was gutted, but that's fishing. I've caught some fantastic fish. I've had such a great time on this water. I may not be back for a few years now, but I've enjoyed every single moment of it. So although I didn't manage to get one on the float, although losing that fish, I did manage to get one on the flatbed feeders, which in my eyes, the superior tactic to catch them on. Not as enjoyable, but they're absolutely fantastic, and I had a 3-1. So yeah, that was a great end to a fantastic campaign.